Okay, this is 1.4 to 1.6 quiz review. So we're going to start by looking at direct variation. Remember, direct variation is y equals k times x, where k is our constant. So the directions here, we want to determine whether y varies directly with x. If so, we're going to find the constant of variation and write the function rule. So we're going to start by looking at our x's and our y's. We should always write our constant as y divided by x. Y's are always in the numerator. So in this case, we have 9 and 27. So we're going to write that as 9 over 27. And that can be simplified to 1/3. Then we have 10 and 30. So writing that as y over x, that's going to be 10 over 30. So again, simplifying to 1/3. And then finally, our last point is 60, 20. So we're going to write that as y over x, 20 over 60, which also simplifies to 1/3. So 1/3 is our k, and it looks like it's the same for all three of our points. To write the equation, then, all we have to do is plug our k into the equation. So y is going to be equal to 1/3 x. Okay, and now we're going to take a look at the second problem. We have 22 and 11. Remember, y over x. See if we can simplify that. 22 over 11 is equal to 2. For the second point, we have 16, 32. So again, y over x. 32 divided by 16 also equals 2. And then the last point, 742. So y over x. 42 divided by 7 gives us 6. So this is not a direct variation because our k's do not match up. Okay, next we are going to be looking at direct variation still, this time finding a variable if we have 3 other variables. So with the first one, if y is equal to -7 when x equals -3, we want to find y when x equals 9. So we know y equals -7 when x is equal to -3. This is the type of problem where we have to set up a proportion. We don't know what the second y is. We know that the second x is 9. So I set up my proportion as y over x, equals the y that I'm looking for over its matching x. So for this, we cross multiply. So I do -7 times 9. -7 times 9 is going to give me -63 equals my -3 times y is just -3y. And then I solve, so I divide by -3 on both sides. And I get y is equal to 21. And that's my answer. Okay, so looking at the second one, if y is equal to 25 when x equals 15, and we want to find y when x is equal to 6. So again, we are looking for y. We know x is equal to 6. So I set up my proportion as y over x. So 25 over 15 equals y over 6. And again, I'm cross multiplying, so 25 times 6 is 150. 15 times y gives us 15y. And then just like the other one, solve for y. So divide by 15 on both sides, I get y is equal to 10. And that's my answer. Our last direct variation is going to be a word problem. So the height of an object varies directly with the length of its shadow. A person is 6 feet tall, casts an 8.5-foot shadow, while a tree casts a 38-foot shadow. And we want to know how tall the tree is. So again, we are setting up a proportion. So, and I'm just going to draw a picture. And you guys already know my pictures are not very good. So this is my person. They are 6 feet tall. Their shadow, we'll say this is their shadow. Shut up, that looks like a shadow. The shadow is 8.5 feet tall, or long. Okay, and then we have a tree. Beautiful tree, I know. And the tree, we don't know the height of the tree. So this is going to be our variable. But we do know that the shadow of the tree is 38 feet long. So we want to know the height of the tree. So again, setting up a proportion. So the person's actual height over their shadow's height is going to be equal to the tree's actual height, which we don't know, over its shadow. So shadows are in the denominator, the actual heights are in the numerator. Remember we need to make sure those match up in a proportion. And then we are going to go ahead and solve it like normal. So cross multiply and divide. 6 times 38, which gives us 228. And then 8.5 times x, which is 8.5x. Divide by the 8.5. And we get that x is equal to approximately 26.8 feet. So the original height of the tree was 28.6. Okay, if y varies directly with x and y is 20 when x is 4, what is the equation that describes the situation? So again, we're trying to put this in y equals kx. So in order to write an equation, we need to know what k is. This is the only number that we need to plug in. So to figure out what k is, remember k is equal to y over x. And they give us a y and an x. So I just need to take that and plug it into this equation. If y is 20 when x is 4, we're going to have 20 divided by 4. 20 divided by 4 gives us 5, so that is our k. So this number we need to take and plug into our equation, and that'll give us the equation that represents the situation. We just needed to find k. We find k by taking y divided by x. After we have k, we plug it into the equation, and we're done. Okay, the next question. Write the equation of the line shown above in slope-intercept form, or in this case below in slope-intercept form. So first we need to know what slope-intercept form is. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. To write an equation in slope-intercept form, we need to know what our slope is, and we need to know what the y-intercept is. So to find slope, we count our rise over our run. So we need to choose 2 points on the line. So I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to do this in a different color. I'm going to pick this one and this one because they are 2 easy points. So I count my rise over my run. So I had to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So I rise up 4 spaces, I run out 5 spaces. I'll write that in red, it's kind of hard to see. Okay, so my rise over my run is 4 over 5. That's going to be my slope. And then next I just need to figure out what my y-intercept is. The y-intercept should be pretty easy to figure out. If the line is graphed, your y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So here is where our line hits the y-axis, which is at positive 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so our y-intercept is just a positive 4. And that is the equation of our line. So, recap. Find the slope using rise over run. So we counted from one space to the next. We had to figure out how far up or down we go, and then how far to the right. So we went up 4 spaces over 5, so that means our slope was 4 over 5. And then the y-intercept we get from looking at the graph, wherever the line crosses the y-axis, that's going to be our y-intercept. Okay, next, write the equation in slope-intercept form. So again, we want it to be in y equals mx plus b form. So really all we're doing is trying to isolate the y. So in this case, the only thing that's on the same side as our y is the 6, and I get rid of that by subtracting it. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. I get negative y is equal to 3x plus 4. And remember that minus sign, it stays with the y, so that's how we ended up with a negative y. If there isn't a number in front of a variable, remember that number is just a 1, so this is the same thing as saying negative 1y. So our last step then, to get rid of the negative 1, I divide, and I need to divide every single term by negative 1. So I end up with y equals positive 3 divided by negative 1 gives me a negative 3. And a positive 4 divided by a negative 1 gives me a negative 4, or minus 4. And that's my answer. I now have it in slope-intercept form. Okay, for the next couple of problems, all we're doing is finding the slope, and we do that using the slope formula. So the formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we just need to label our points, so this will be my x1 and my y1, my x2 and my y2, and I plug them in. So y2 minus y1, that's going to be negative 1 minus 6 over x2 minus x1, so 8 minus 1. And I simplify. Negative 1 minus 6 is negative 7. And 8 minus 1 is positive 7. And then when I divide those out, I get negative 1. That's my answer. Okay, for the second one, same process. So we're going to label x1, y1, and x2 and y2. After we have those labeled, we can go ahead and plug them in. So y2 minus y1 is going to be 3 minus 9 on top. And x2 minus x1, so 0 minus negative 3. Remember, if we have minus a negative, that changes to a positive. So on top, 3 minus 9 gives us the negative 6. And on bottom, when I change that to plus, 0 plus 3 gives me 3. I can divide those out then. Negative 6 divided by 3 gives me negative 2, and that is my slope. Okay, finding the slope of a line if we're given the graph. So this is pretty simple. We're just counting our rise over our run. If we have to move down when we're counting our rise, so first let me pick 2 points. I'm going to pick this point because it's easy, and this point. So we pick 2 points on our line, and we need to count. And it always moves from left to right. In this case, we are moving down. If we have to move down, the rise is going to be negative. And we can tell that the slope is going to be negative by looking at the line. If it goes down from left to right, it is a negative slope. When we go up from left to right, that's when it's positive. So in this case, I should already know that it's going to be negative. I start at my first point. I had to move down 1 space. So my rise is a negative 1. And then my run, 1, 2, 3 spaces. So my rise is negative 1, my run is a positive 3, therefore my slope is negative 1 over 3, negative 1/3. Okay, write each equation in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So for number 25, 8x plus 6y equals 5. All we're doing here is rearranging the equations that y is by itself on the left side. We want to isolate y. So we're going to start by moving the x over. In order to move an x or any variable, we have to either add or subtract. If it's a positive 8x, I'm going to subtract 8x. So I get 6y equals, if we want it in this form, the x needs to come first. So that negative 8x and the positive 5, I can't combine those. One of them has a variable and the other one does not. So I need to put the negative 8x out front. That positive 5 is going to come as my second term. And then finally, just divide by the 6. And I need to divide every single term by 6. So I end up with y equals negative 8 over 6 simplifies to negative 4/3. And then the 5/6 does not simplify, so I'm going to leave that as 5/6. For the second one, we're following the same procedure. So subtracting the 9x from both sides, I end up with negative 2y equals. And on the left side, remember the x term needs to come first. So my negative 9x, I'm going to put out front. And the positive 10 will be my second term. And then I need to divide by the number in front of y. So dividing by negative 2. Negative 9 over negative 2, a negative divided by a negative, is going to simplify to a positive. And then 10 divided by negative 2 gives me negative 5 or minus 5. Okay, next we're writing an equation of each line, and we're doing this in point-slope form. So point-slope form, that is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I label my point as x1 and y1. It gives me my slope, so I have the three things that I need. I have an x-coordinate, y-coordinate, and my slope. I just need to plug them in. So y minus y1 is 5, equals my slope, which is 3, plugging that in then, times x minus x1, and x1 is positive 1. And that's all that I have to do for this one. For the second one, our slope is 5/6, and it's going through the point 22, 12. So this is again going to be my x1 and my y1. And I plug them into this equation. So I will have y minus my y1, which is 12, equals my slope times x minus my x1. And for these types of problems, it's really important to remember that if we have negatives, so for example, let's say that I change this to a negative 12. If I had my slope as 5/6, we'll keep it the same, and it goes through the point 22, comma, negative 12. I would say y minus my y1, and in this case, my y1 is a negative 12. So when I plug it in, it's going to be minus negative 12. You need to make sure that you simplify that. So 5/6 times x minus 22. So if I had this, the y1 was a negative instead. When I plug that in, I need to make sure I simplify the minus negative. That simplifies to a plus. So y plus 12 equals 5/6 times x minus 22. Be very, very careful of the negatives. Okay, and then finally, which line is perpendicular to negative x plus 4y equals 24? So we have a few different answers here, and they're all in slope-intercept form. So the first thing I want to do is change this equation into slope-intercept form. So in order to do that, I'm going to start by moving my x. So my x's cancel. I end up with 4y equals, remember the x needs to come out front. In slope-intercept form, the x term is first, followed by the constant, so plus 24. And then I need to get rid of the 4, so I'm dividing by 4 on both sides. And I have to do it to every single term. So don't forget, if there's not a number in front of the x, that means it's just a 1. So I end up with y equals 1/4 x plus 24 divided by 4 gives us 6. So now that I have the equation in slope-intercept form, I'm going to be able to look at my slope. So the slope is 1/4. And this is a perpendicular line. So perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So I need to figure out what the negative reciprocal of 1/4 is. Remember that negative reciprocal means we take our slope, we flip it, and we change the sign. So since it was a positive 1/4, I'm going to change it to a negative 4/1. And negative 4/1 simplifies to negative 4. So I'm looking for the equation that has negative 4 as the slope. To be perpendicular, they have negative reciprocal slopes. So after I change it into slope-intercept form, I can determine what the slope is. I find the negative reciprocal of that slope. The negative reciprocal is negative 4. So any equation that has this slope is going to be perpendicular to my original equation. And it looks like my answer is going to be letter B. It's the only equation that has a negative 4 as the slope. Okay, and that is the end of our review. So good luck on the quiz tomorrow. And that's all. The end. La 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 la.